let anybody take your manhood. Be proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. There's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Urban Update. I'm Byron Barnett. Each year here at Urban Update, we dedicate the show to the legacy of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King on the day before the national holiday. Today we'll be discussing Dr. King's legacy and what he means in contemporary society in terms of our moral and civic life on the eve of Martin Luther King Day. Later on the show, we'll talk with elected officials and political organizers about the ideals Dr. King left behind, and we'll finish off the show talking about some major events during this King weekend, especially the ones tomorrow. But up first, Ambassador Charles Stith, a longtime civil rights activist and civic leader who in the 1990s was appointed by President Clinton to serve as ambassador to Tanzania. Reverend Stith also served as pastor of Union United Church in the South End for more than a decade. And we also have this morning Kevin Peterson, the founder of the New Democracy Coalition. Peterson's organization has registered thousands of voters across the state and was responsible for the successful redistricting efforts in 2012. Peterson writes a regular column locally for the Boston Herald and a national column on race and politics for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Welcome to Urban Update, gentlemen. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for the invite.
Martin Luther King Day weekend. Let's start with you, Ambassador Smith. We opened up, as you just heard, with a clip of Dr. King preaching about black being beautiful. I don't know how many people have heard that particular clip before. We hear Dr. King talking about racial pride. Talk to me about what you heard listening to that.
Well, I thought it was a great clip, and great because the further we get away from Martin's assassination, the more sanitized he becomes. And he had this way of focusing laser-like on the critical issues of the day, and the issue of race and how black people were understood by the large society, about how black people understood themselves, he knew was equally important as any legislation in terms of redeeming the African-American community and redeeming the soul of America.
Kevin Peterson, you follow Dr. King's life, and he inspires you as a democracy activist, I would presume, in talking about civil rights here. Talk to me about that. Is he talking about something else? When you talk about Dr. King and democracy.
Mm-hmm. Well, to the ambassador's point, many people don't connect King the citizen to the I Have a Dream speech per se. The King the citizen, and he sort of articulated it in very clear and robust terms in what we just heard, was also focusing on the individual, talking about black pride. He is an existential sort of examination of where black people were in the late 1960s. So a lot of people don't make those connections closely and don't make the very clear connections between King the citizen, who's engaged in policy making in the mid-60s, post 1963.
Now, Ambassador Stith, one of the things you just said that as time goes on, Dr. King becomes sanitized, and I find that an interesting thought, because if you think back about it, you're talking about back in the '60s when he was living. Yeah. I mean, he was kind of scary to a lot of people, and now we're talking about him being, sort of sanitized. I mean, it's talk to me about, I guess, the difference between then and now, just his image and what we see?
You know, I think the fact that he's as esteemed as he is a good thing. You know, it says something about how far America has come when you've got folks on the right end of the political spectrum like Sarah Palin and Newt Gingrich who will quote Martin King now. That's good news. But that's also the bad news, because you know what the folks try to do is kind of dumb down the message and meaning of Martin. He was a radical, and he was challenging our society in very, very fundamental ways. And I think if he were alive today, he would be very, very much disturbed at where we are. You know, despite the election of an African-American president, which is huge, given America's tangled history around race. But when you look at every socioeconomic indicator, African Americans are worse off today than we were 10 years ago, and particularly in the city of Boston, despite its robust economy and outstanding rates of growth. The African American community has been left behind.
Now, Ambassador, on Thursday, you published in the Bay State Banner, along with other clergy in Boston, sort of an epistle on race, economic justice, and hope. What's the point of that letter to the community?
That we have to revisit the commonwealth of this city, the commonweal of this state, and take account that African Americans and other people of color, while now making up the majority, are still marginalized. Our economy has gone through a profound transition over the last 25 years. 25 years ago, we did the community reinvestment with a consortium of 15 banks. That's when we had banks that were domiciled in Boston. Our economy has shifted. The drivers of our economy are now high tech, higher education, and healthcare. And if you look at all those sectors, African Americans are all but absent. And unless we are very intentional about opening up the doors to opportunity in those sectors, we're going to continue to be on the margins of this economy.
Kevin, what about that? What about a letter like that? A need for a letter like this?
I read the letter, and I think it's spot on. And I think King would approve of such a letter. One of the things that I wanted to respond to is that as we celebrate King this weekend, we're remiss in remembering how out of the limelight he was before he was assassinated, how he had a very low popularity even within the black community. And it's interesting to reflect back on that and reflect back on some of the ideas that he was championing as he was before he was assassinated, and that's the Poor People's Campaign, where he was very, very diligent and focused on this issue of inequality, racial inequality, and income inequality. And I think that message, as we celebrate and reflect on King, should still resonate today.
What do you think Dr. King would think about the political situation we have today? The politics that we have. I mean, you talked about income inequality then. Yeah. I guess I'll throw that out to both of you. What we've seen, Black Lives Matter. Yeah. Would Dr. King?
Well, I think he would be optimistic about Black Lives Matter, but in general, I think he would be not pleased in terms of how the society is developed or devolved since his time here on Earth. I don't think he would be pleased with the polarized political system that we're witnessing. I don't think he would be pleased with the state of Black America in terms of certain deficits in terms of educational attainment, the assault on Black lives by police officers across the country. There would be many things that I think that he would be upset about and focusing on in terms of challenging America to be better.
I would echo all of the points that Kevin just made, and I would add that I think he would be extremely proud and pleased that Barack Hussein Obama was elected President of the United States and re-elected President of the United States, despite the level of acrimony in terms of the political discourse in this country. And I think as a rhetorician, he would have been very, very pleased with the president's State of the Union address last week. I thought the president was on point, and I think Dr. King would have appreciated it, particularly the 4 questions that President Obama posed that we as a country need to take seriously as we look toward the future.
Where do you still see major divides, you think, between black America, white America, where we have not made inroads?
Well, in Boston in particular, you have this, what seems like, well, first of all, you basically have residential apartheid in the city, where blacks are pretty much, poor blacks are pretty much segregated in different pockets of the city, and there's no relief. But I've been thinking more recently about our public institutions and the discrimination that happens there, particularly the police department. Recently, a federal judge ruled about discrimination on a promotional exam within the police department. And just last week, the MCAD ruled against the police department in terms of providing a cadet an opportunity within the police department. So there's local, we can talk in the macro level in terms of national stuff, but locally in Boston, we still got problems that Dr. King, as he went to Memphis to deal with local problems, Dr. King would come to Boston to deal with problems in our public institutions that reflect racism.
I guess I'll wrap things up by asking you both a question about why you believe, or why this day should be meaningful to people today.
Well, given the extent to which we've become obsessed with materialism in our society, that it's good that we have this day to focus on the vision and values of Martin Luther King Jr. Thank God there are no Martin Luther King Jr. special sales. We still take this day all across the country as a moment to pause and reflect on the demands of the moment relative to justice, hope, and opportunity.
The importance of the beloved community theme that he articulated throughout his ministry, that's important. It's important for us within a democracy to really recognize the fact that we ought to be a community, we ought to be together. That's an important part of this message that resonates with me.
Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. Kevin Peterson and Ambassador Charles Stith, thank you both for coming in on this Martin Luther King Day weekend. Thank you for coming in. Okay, take care. All right. Well, when we come back, how Dr. King's ideals have impacted our black elected officials, right here in Urban Update. Stay with us, we'll be right back.